Hello, this is Hector Bordas with Conversations with Hector. Today's episode we have Abdul Haikal. And Abdul and I, we have been friends for several years and we haven't had a chat like this in a while. The pandemic has really changed so many things. And then we used to get together, not only Abdul and I and other friends, we had some great stories about life, family, philosophy, leadership, physical and mental well-being, which is really important not only to us but to other people. So Abdul, welcome. Great to see you, man.
Thank you, Hector. It is so great to see you and to learn about what you're doing. So,
Yeah, these are exciting times. You know, during the pandemic, people have been trying different things, different adventures, challenging themselves, and see what's going on. So I have a question for you. During
mhm.
this 2+ years, we really have very little time to the whole physical connection and being face to face. How have you been feeding that monster, that need to connect?
Oh man, I have been super deliberate about it because there's a part of us that needs to be fed, and I love how you said it. It needs to be fed. It needs to be nourished and nurtured. And so I'm very lucky to have my unit here, my family, my wife, and my two kids. So that part, like to a pretty good degree, I have that covered. My neighbors, I've just been talking to my neighbors and getting to know, the family next door and the family
Mm,
right across, and just talking to people as we're, walking because, the gym closed, for example, right? So then in the process of me building my home gym, it's in the garage, so then the door would be open, and then people would come and stop by. Oh, what are you doing? Oh, what do you got? Oh, what do you like? Sometimes I have my friends over, and then my friends don't have their gym, so then I invite them over, and it's like, hey, just come on over. It's a pretty good space, and so my friends, and so it just got people peeking, talking, asking these questions. So you know, and then it was the neighbors, and then it's people here in the city. Oh, what's the community doing? What's this park doing? Oh, and then you go to the
yeah.
park, and then you get to know people. So it was super local. It was super organic for us, and I just somebody two days ago was talking about how like life stopped for 2 years for them. This was like back when we got
Yeah.
to work. This was on Wednesday for me. And then, they're like, life stopped. I'm like, really? I think for me, life happened in those 2 years. I think life was kind of like not happening before then. And then it just like happened because now you tuned inward and then people tuned inward. And then you just, like you said, you like reprioritize and you see things differently and then you learn and you go deeper. So that's kind of been something super interesting on my part. Um, how have you fed that part?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. I mean, you said that for some people life stopped, but it didn't. I think there was a tremendous evolution during this period because we were, I don't know, forced is the right word, but to maybe kind of dig in and really find out things about ourselves that we didn't know because we had the
Mhm.
time and we were not bombarded by so many other different things. We were at home, and we had to figure things out. And I think, we learned so much during that time. It was phenomenal. And it wasn't easy, obviously. There were times it was challenging
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
the social connection really had an impact on people. But I like what you said. You make those organic connections, and people were curious walking by your garage. What's going on? What's
Mhm.
Abdul doing? And 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 it sounds like you were brave enough to connect, whereas the news was so scary. All the fear about this and that, and not only the pandemic, but all the social unrest created so much anxiety. And at the same time, you were brave enough to allow those connections. How'd you get there? Did you allow that to
Mhm.
happen?
So one part of me had to, relax a little bit, because I'm the type where, like, if I'm walking with my wife, for example, and I see somebody who's interesting or doing something interesting, I just talk to that person. If it's on the plane, if it's, I'm that kind of guy that would just initiate that conversation. My wife is like, just keep going, stop. Because sometimes it takes like 15 minutes because that person is so interesting, or maybe you have so
Right.
much in common. So I had to put that on the back seat just a little bit because of me making people uncomfortable. So anytime that somebody else approached, because I'm open here. So if somebody else came and approached me and wanted to talk, then perfect, boom, you know. So the
Yeah.
tough part was me not, going and initiating so much of those conversations and being the pre-COVID Abdul.
Uh-huh.
But just to realize people's sensitivities, and that this is like, a thing that maybe I have, um, you know, I don't know. We don't want to talk too much about the COVID thing. I just
I
since
know.
day
Let's
one,
go beyond it.
I just since day one, I did not want that to stop, or slow down what I was doing. So since day one, I just wanted to keep doing things. Like you said, people just had, I think what it was like, to a large degree, is the time. People just had a lot more time. I mean, think about
Yeah.
it, like with traffic. Like for us, I mean, we were commuting from Orange County to LA County. And that commute was taking up more than 10 hours a week in some weeks, maybe like eight
Yeah.
hours. 8 hours a week is a full work day that you're spending in the car. And as much intentionality as we want to bring to our time, listening to podcasts, connecting with friends and family on the phone, whatever it is that we want to do to fill up that time and not just listen to music. I know you and I mean, maybe like some days, like we just want to listen to that music, but maybe you can fill up that time with something that is just a little bit more um, productive. But you're just, a lot of the time, we're so tired. So my dad still drives to LA, right? He drives from Orange
Uh-huh.
County, from Anaheim to UCLA every day, and they did not stop in construction, during COVID in the construction. And what's very interesting is my dad is in mid 60s, and they're in the construction world. So, hustle, bustle, machines, pollution, movement, going up and down shafts, whatever. He said that part does not tire him as much as that drive back.
Oh.
So that drive, just like, he's done for the day from the drive, not because of all the physical stuff in the construction, but from the drive. So that drive itself, not only does it take time, but it's adding on so much stress. It's taking so much of our energy, and it's doing a lot more than we really think it is. It's not innocuous where you're just sitting in the car and it's just not, it's so innocent. It's not doing anything. It's doing a lot more than we really think it is. Oh, not to add the bad posture that you're driving. I mean, you're not in a perfectly, I mean, maybe you
Yeah.
are, Hector, because
No.
your posture is amazing. But
I had
a
this
lot of
board on
us,
my back.
oh, to keep the alignment. We're doing this, we're like doing
Yeah.
this sometimes, where our hand is on our headrest and we're doing a hand rest and we're doing this. So it's compromised posture, it's draining our
Right.
energy, it's adding our stress, it's taking up our time. So that part, adding on just a full work day to your life, is just adding on so much energy, reducing so much stress. You're
Right.
able to, in those 2 hours, be at the gym. You're able to, play with the kids. You're able to go for a walk. You're able to, do what it is that you've wanted to do this whole time. The 8 years before, the 10, the 20, 30 years before that, and just make some time for that, for your
Yeah.
side hustle, your side passion, your whatever that may be. That was huge, and I just wanted, again, to make as best. And I wrote that in my second week. I can show it to you. In the second week that we're in this lockdown, I wrote this thing. I'm like, I need to take fullest advantage of this time that we have working from home, because we could be sent back next week.
Yeah.
And and we didn't, nobody knew it was going to be 2.5 years. But since like week one or week two, I'm like, let me get things structured. Let me make the fullest time and not just sit there and wait until something happens, right? So I still got that to this day. It's cool that 2 years
Oh,
later
it's
that I was
fantastic.
cleaning up and I see it. I'm like, oh man, yeah, that was a good note to myself.
No, it's fantastic.
But
Hey,
yeah.
so you asked me earlier. So what did I do? How did I maintain the connections? So I found myself. I mean, I have a lot of cousins, and a lot of them are on the East Coast, and cousins that maybe we talked once a year, or and I reconnected with them and flew out there, hung out with them.
Oh,
All of a sudden, I have these new friends
mhm.
that it's just like, oh my gosh, and now we're doing things together, even though we're on different sides of the country. We're planning things, planning to go to restaurants, even though they're on the East Coast. I'm out here. I go, we're gonna go to this restaurant. I go, okay, all right, you book it, I'll fly.
Wow.
We'll do this.
Wow.
Yeah, so we became kind of foodies in some ways, and I have another cousin who's a beast of a trainer, and
Mm.
oh my gosh, she asked me, "Hey, why don't you come to Atlanta, Georgia, spend a week with me?" And I thought, okay, never been to Atlanta, so I went to Atlanta. I was blown away by that city. Oh my gosh, it was just phenomenal. And so, but there was no relaxation with her. Earlier morning, going to the gym, hour and a half. I go, okay, this
Yeah.
is vacation. But it was awesome. And now have another new best friends.
Mm.
So I think it gave me an opportunity to reconnect with family
Mm.
and meet other people all over the place. And this platform, this technology, it helped tremendously.
Hmm.
It really did.
Hmm.
So hey, I want to go back to something.
Amazing.
You were talking about work a little bit, and you kind of mentioned you and I. So you're an engineer. I want to kind of explore that,
Hmm.
and a civil engineer. What got you there?
Uh, I think the story started actually with my dad. He left Lebanon in the 70s in the Civil War,
Mm,
and he came here to study civil engineering. That was his thing. And because he had to like work 3 jobs here, and just personal circumstances, he wasn't able to finish. And so, looking at back at it right now, I think my dad was conditioning me to fulfill something that he wasn't able to finish. And
mm,
so, like I mentioned, he's in construction, and that's only because he wasn't able to finish this engineering thing. So I think when like it was time for me to apply, like yeah, I was good at math and science and all that stuff. I just I had no other option really. Like it's just, oh,
uh-huh.
engineer, dad. I never thought about it. I didn't have this other mentor, for example. I would have loved to do something in the medical field. Um, Something maybe not like a medical doctor, but maybe something like along sports. I mean, sports medicine isn't really like, I mean, you're not a physician, but something with like anatomy, more like being a physiologist, sports physiologist. What do they call them? Like, I'm blanking on the name. A DPT, a physical
Uh-huh.
therapist, for example. I mean, the human body has amazed me all this time. So if I was right now to text message the 17-year-old me at the time, I would have
Uh-huh.
been like, "Hey, you're just curiosity and love of learning about the human body and just optimizing our health and our well-being and our
Mm.
this whole integration of the mental, the emotional, the physical, the spiritual, all that. Look into that more and not just apply to a school. Oh, I'm a civil engineer because you're going to be stuck with that the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Um, Again, these days it's hard to get yourself unstuck from it, but I really like engineering. I don't love engineering.
Right, right.
I like it. I do like it. And it provides me with the balance that I need to, um, you know, sustain my sanity and to have just a balanced life. So I like engineering, but I love the life and the balance that it provides for me.
Yeah.
And so that's the little engineering part of it. And right now, 12 years later, still
Uh-huh.
at it, and I want to do this for 24 more years.
Oh, it's phenomenal. I mean, I want to go back to the story of your dad because it's so interesting that you meet people all the time, and everybody has a story,
Mm.
amazing stories. I mean, your dad living in Lebanon with no, was were you born at that time? I mean, we're trying to get a time frame. Did he come with kids or?
Yeah. Now he was 18 at the time. I was definitely not born.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I was born maybe 10 years after he left, maybe like 9, 10 years
Okay.
after he left. So he came and just tried to
Yeah.
establish himself and stuff.
So the
So,
story of your dad coming here in the civil wars and three jobs, I hear other stories, other immigrants, and there are amazing stories. I mean, it's the challenges and the focus that people have to come to this country because of what it provides. And maybe one of these days we can dig into that story, and I'll share mine of my parents. But I think that'll be fascinating and how he influenced you. So,
yeah.
no, you got into something really interesting. So, I don't particularly like labels. Hey, you're an engineer, and that's your label forever.
Mm,
It's not.
mm,
There's just so
mm,
much here, and you talked about the biology and understanding the human body, how the mental, physical, and spiritual is so collected. So one
mm.
thing, and I know that I don't want to call it a side hustle because it's like and it's because it's not a side hustle.
Mm.
It's what you do and what you are, that you embody those things, and you're trying to help people in those areas. I think listening to you, like you went through the whole engineering, and you're kind of back. Yeah, you're doing the engineering, but you're kind of back into the whole mental, physical, and spiritual part. What is it that you're doing there? How are you helping people in that area?
Yeah, well, first I had to help myself. Um, you know, I don't, I mean, sometimes I call it the quarter life crisis. Sometimes I'm more careful to label it as such. But maybe like 2 years into engineering, 2 years into it, again, so just a little bit of context. I've been super active all of my life. So I was four, my dad put me in this karate academy. All throughout my childhood, active swimming, soccer, basketball, whatever it is. High school, I did the football, I did swimming again, I did wrestling. So I was super, there's not one year in my like academic years where I could be in a sport, in an intramural sport, and I
Hmm.
wasn't. Like I was always in something, and it was like season after season after season.
Right.
Like I didn't know what after school was for me because all it was sports. Like it wasn't just come home, watch TV, eat, and you know,
Hmm.
it's always sports. So back to, me graduating, I got my master's and I'm working as an engineer and I'm just behind this desk for 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours a day. And when I was studying for my PE, not only was it the 10-hour shift, but it was also like, the studying part of it. So you're from a desk and then you move and you're doing more of this desk stuff.
Right.
So something just started not feeling right for me. Like when I was at the gym, like I was recovering much slower than I would back when
Mm.
I was super active. Like this brain fog that people talk about it, like I was just like, what brain fog? Like I started feeling that brain fog.
Oh no.
Back aches, for example. People talk, I'm like, backache. I've never experienced anything like that. Backache started happening for me. And it's like my mid back, it's so weird. Why is my mid back like, but it was like we said, it's the driving, it's the sitting, it's everything put together. And then if you get into like, like ancient medicine and studying like energy, our posture to a very large degree affects our organs. And our organs affect our physical uh, being like the way. So, for example, if you know your kidney is
Hmm.
not functioning right, that is going to affect one part of your body. They're energetically connected to different part, and you're like, why am I like, what's going on here? Well, maybe it's what you're eating, and then it's vice versa too, because of the posture. Then your internal is getting affected that way. And I'm like, so then I started studying about that stuff. I'm like, I needed to learn about my body again and why am I feeling that way and why, despite me having a great career, an amazing woman on my side, um, having basically everything that I need, why am I still feeling that way? And so I had to look for the answers myself. Um, I some people just the first thing that they do is they go see like a professional or a doctor or something. I mean, that's cool. But for me, I think because professionals see so many people, they're not really going to know you. And you are the one that knows you the most. And so it's a chance for me to really learn about not only the body, but the emotions and the psychology and all that. And I just started studying, man. I went back to school, so to speak, just started
Yeah.
studying about these things. And then one thing, I do something, and then because I got this like engineering mindset, like the scientific approach. So like try something, it works, it doesn't
Right,
work. So
right.
I started just experimenting with myself. And what if I get this much sleep? What if I combine that much sleep with this much activity? What if I do this, and I eat this much less, for example? And so what if I get sun exactly at sunrise instead of my like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or
Mm.
whatever? So I just started doing that for years, and one little thing would help, and then another little thing would help, and those little two things just helped me out tremendously. And I would just keep doing that, and I was just exploring and experimenting, and then I got myself out of that like rut, and like it took me like 2 years to do that.
Yeah.
um, but I learned so much about myself, and then I naturally, because people started seeing me, they started asking me all these questions, and I'm like, for me, this is the way that it worked for me. Try it out. And then they would try it out, and they're like, "Man, that was amazing." And then one one person, I mean, he's like, "I've been trying to figure this out for like a year, and you just, that was it, man. Abdul, you should be a
Mm.
coach." And I'm like, "I shouldn't be." And then like 2 weeks later, I was like, "Abdul, man, you really should like, help people and coach and teach us stuff." I'm like, "Me? Nah." You know, and then it just happened. It just kept happening, and then um, I kept hearing enough people tell me about it. I'm like, maybe I should give it a shot. Like, I did study
Yeah.
all this. Let me just, see what's out there, take a test, and make it something where I really could be more legit, more official, and start doing this.
Yeah.
So that's how it started. I mean, it started out of this, this, I call it the quarter life crisis for me.
Yeah.
And something amazing emerged out of it, something amazing. And then out of that was um, the creation of Peace and Power. So this is my coaching platform. Peace and Power. It's the the integration of the physical and the spiritual, emotional, all that.
Mm.
Mental, of course, that's a huge thing. It's basically lifestyle coaching,
Mm.
and it was a program for myself before it was a program for anybody else. It was something to help me out, and yeah, and with COVID, I mean, that was another um, silver lining for me, is that there's a huge need for something like that, and like it went like this for me. So it's been an incredible ride, and so that's how I got into this coaching thing.
Yeah. Your quarter life crisis. That's a phenomenal story. I mean, it's so amazing. It's we're not meant for sitting down and
Mm,
relaxing, and we're not meant. We have to move, and we have to see what works for us. What are those nutrients that work for us? And it takes time and be willing to experiment and see what happens. I mean, I started that many years ago,
Mm,
and then I kind of let it go, and then it came back again. You know, that the curiosity. My son actually was the one that, oh my gosh, for a while he was this extreme biohacker trying
mm,
the craziest stuff. I was going, I'm not touching that.
mm,
But he exposed me to some new ideas and different supplements and different things to eat and why this and why that. And I think it's been fantastic. I mean, I have my, you know, what I, my supplements in the morning and I know they work. I mean, I've actually, okay, I'm going to experiment. I'm going to get off this stuff for a couple of weeks. And then I actually feel it. I go,
mm.
wow, okay, I'm getting back. I have to do that. And thinking about your gut biome and what a huge impact that has on everything. And yeah, and then you get to a point, I don't know, and then you know, you get to a point that you're eating something and you know it's not going to be good for you, and you then you realize it, you know, and like yesterday I was with my cousin, and my body was telling me you need to eat this kind of stuff today. It's actually I can sense it, and so okay, I got to go eat this. So it's really interesting how that happens, but it does take an effort, and however the rewards are just phenomenal. They're just it's not you're not starving yourself. You're eating really well. You're eating what you like, and then you go into the whole physical part, what that does for you mentally. It's phenomenal what it does for you. It helps you prevent all kinds of things. You know, Alzheimer's,
Oh yeah.
dementia, just to name a few. You know, and maintain your cognitive thinking at a certain level as you age. Because I'm older than you, and I think about that, and I know, okay, you know, exercise is not only good physically, you know, but my gosh, for your thinking, your long term cognition is
Mm,
so amazing, so amazing. So I'm really
absolutely.
glad to hear that you're helping people in that area. That's phenomenal. But I want to go back to your engineering. So what are your plans? What are you thinking? And then kind of mix it in with leadership, you know, because you got this whole technical side, right? You know, which is
Mm,
phenomenal. And then, you know, what people call soft skills. You know, where are you going with that? And
mm.
what's that journey like?
Yeah, you know, a lot of these influencers that we see online, and you know, they got like the huge muscles and the six pack, and they just look
Uh-huh.
perfect, right? That is not reality. Okay, for most people, it is their reality, but for most people, it is not reality. For me,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the 2 hours to be at the gym like they do and to take, you know, this much protein in and to have, you know, these meals, and some of them have chefs and they have these, you know, services that they do their food. And I have a job. I have like
Mm-hmm.
an engineering job. And so does 98% of the population. They have a job that they have to go to. You know,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're an entrepreneur or, you know, employed or whatever it is, you got to be there from, you know, certain hours of the
Yeah.
day, and you got to have this like, you know, these challenging circumstances and the stress and all that. And sometimes you have like this 10-minute lunch period, and sometimes it's 8 minutes, and so, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like, and then the traffic. So like the reality for 98, 99% of the people is them dealing with this life that's happening.
Right.
So for me, I am not somebody who's at the gym 8 hours a day, or, you know, some of them are
Mm-hmm.
there for 8 hours. Or I'm in this perfect environment where I know a lot of trainers too that don't have kids running around the house, you know, so they
Right.
are able to be, whether they're, you know, their kids are older and in college, or whether they don't have any kids. But for me, not only do I have a job, but I got kids. And not only do I have the kids, but I also, for the last 5.5 years, I've been teaching classes, engineering classes at, Cal State Long Beach. I've been very fortunate to do that. So do almost like 80% of people have like a second job? Most people have like a second job. So when you are able to maintain a healthy lifestyle with the 19 things that you're juggling in life, this is reality. And
Yeah.
for me, you mentioned the word leadership. I don't see myself as a leader in the sense that, hey, like, I'm doing this, you should do that, follow me. But the leader in the sense that my personal standard is that I want to maintain the healthiest, happiest, most emotionally charged, most mentally like sharp, all that despite everything, despite,
Right.
my kid having 105 fever the other night, waking us up in the middle of the night,
Mm.
because he's in so much, pain or whatever. Like,
Right.
despite that, then the next morning, I still want to be able to deliver at my job. I still want to be able to eat healthy. I still want to get my workout in. I still want to have my peace time here in my
Mm.
garden that I just put together. Again, the tail end of COVID for this one.
Right.
But so I think this is key where despite life happening and despite like the juggling that we're doing, to be able to maintain that, I think people hopefully are inspired by something like that. Instead of,
Yeah.
hey, I'm at the gym, I look amazing, I like this is my environment, this is everything that I do. And God knows what else they take as far as like, you know, performance enhancements that are not
Right.
natural or like
Yeah.
whatever, anything else. I mean, most of these things are protein powder. A lot of it is not natural. I mean, they say, oh, like I'm 100. Okay, like look at the list of ingredients on there. Like how much of that is processed? How much of that is an
Mm-hmm.
artificial man-made thing that they just throw in there? So again, when there's just so much things happening that we just don't know. Um,
Right.
so just focusing on the you part, right? On focusing on me every single day, to be able to live this healthiest. Because, like you said, I mean, everything else gets better when you have this healthy ritual, right? Like this healthy lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I want to ask you that you're a surfer.
Yeah.
So, have you ever went into the water and surfed and went back after and felt depressed?
Oh, good question. It's interesting. I think it has happened. Well, actually, let me step back a little bit. A few months ago, I hurt my shoulders,
Oh yeah, and
so I haven't been able to do a lot of paddling lately. I'm just trying to get back into it. So I've been a few months out,
oh,
but I know I've gone to the gym, and and this happens sometimes. It's the energy level's not there, but somehow you get to the gym. Somehow you get there and say, I'm here. And what's exciting is you got there, which is a fantastic step. You put in that shirt or shoe, I mean, and you got there. So that's a huge first step. And once you get there, and just start anything. And within 5 minutes, things just click, and all of a sudden you're elevated. But what has happened, I know, in some instances, is that you're done with that, and 10 minutes later, kind of something weird creeps in. And it's like, you know, your energy drops down, a little bit of like sadness kind of creeps in. So it does happen. So what do you do? What is
wait,
it?
wait. This
And
is this is during. This is after you got out of the water, for example.
after,
Okay,
yeah. So what's going on there? What are you thinking?
that is really interesting. It's really interesting. I mean, the
But
answer that I,
I mean, it's very
it's
rare.
rare.
But I know it has happened. It
Yeah.
has happened.
So I think I know the answer, but just to tell you the answer that I was
What?
trying to get you Be like, no, I've never felt. It just always feels amazing after a physical workout.
Well,
But I'll,
it does feel amazing. It does. It's really, oh my gosh, it's such a high. It does feel amazing. But I know, I mean, I'm done and I get in the car and it's like, okay, why is that creeping in?
yes,
What's there?
yes, yes. I think it's there's two answers that I have at the top of my head for this one. I think one of them is spiritual, and
Mm,
then one of them is more on like the emotional mental side. So I say spiritual because our our soul, it longs for something like the surfing, right? Because you're out in the water, you're in the middle of nowhere. It's amazing.
mhm.
It's so open, right? It's not
Right.
caged in this like
Hmm.
room or this, work floor or whatever it is. It's out there. So then when we take that away from it and we now confine it to the car, and then what's coming after? It's work, it's life, it's all these things.
Exactly.
It's like, I don't want that. So then that spiritual part comes and says, hey, now so you have this disconnect from the spiritual and the physical,
Hmm.
where those were aligned when you were surfing, and now there's now this disconnect where, the body is going somewhere, but the soul wants to go. And they're on two different time zones, by the way. Like the physical and the spiritual, they operate on complete different time zones. So
Yeah.
sometimes it takes us maybe 3 days or 3 weeks to get out of something like that. Where I've experienced it myself, where I've traveled and felt this amazing euphoria. And then I go back. So Sunday night, I'm LAX, Monday morning, I'm back at work. And then I have that feeling that you're talking about, Hector, for that full work week until
Mm.
like maybe the following Wednesday, even, where I feel like back into normal because now my soul is like, okay, it's like adjusted to whatever's going on, and it kind of like
Yeah.
went back into that. The other part, I would say, like the mentally, emotionally one, is because you're flooded with, the feel good hormones. You feel so amazing. And
Hmm.
then at the end, you're like, now you dropped it. Now there's something
Hmm.
where, again, it's like, um, this, you're not releasing that anymore, right? So it's like it's flooded in your system, it's all there, but then the level went up so fast and went down so fast. It's like kind of like a sugar, what do they call it? Like a
Right.
sugar crash,
Yeah.
right? You just say like two or three donuts, and you're like, you're like all over the wall, and then like 45 minutes later, you're like, no. So it's kind of like that. I mean, the surf is like
Right.
the much, much healthier version of those two, three donuts, but you're back and you're feeling that crash, and I think that could be it because it just went up so fast and went down so fast.
Right. So I don't want to get the impression to the 5 million followers on this channel that hey, you shouldn't do physical activity or surf or whatever because you're going to crash. It's really,
No.
oh my gosh, it's really a rare thing. I mean, I wish it's how I can describe, and maybe we'll get into this in a second episode, you and I and others,
Absolutely.
to talk about the whole spiritual mental connection and how all of that is connected. But it's a rare thing, and
Yeah.
I've I know on the spiritual side, all of this requires work. It's
Mm.
not like it's a passive thing. It's not a passive
No,
thing. Just as training exercise, it's not a passive thing. So the spiritual side, it's also it's active. It's thinking about it. It's rituals. It's meditation. It's studying that part and see where it goes, and then having those spiritual experiences, which can be life changing.
you t-
Episode two.
you touched on something that is so deep and it's so important, and
Yeah.
ooh, yeah, yeah, everything you said, just like it gave me that high inside. I'm like, oh man, yeah, this is the stuff. I mean, this is.
Mhm.
I feel like where a lot of us need to really, really spend more time in this zone, just getting to
Yeah.
know that part of us, because You know, that's the part of us that's infinite, you know?
Yeah.
It's just, it's amazing. It really,
Mm-hmm.
really, really is so fascinating, so amazing. Um, and it's deep. I mean, there are people who spend their whole lives
Mm.
just immersed in this and just studying it
Yes.
and practicing their whole lives. And if you were to tell them like, "Hey, have you figured it out?" They'll be like, "I need like 10 more lifetimes, I think, to be able to figure this thing out."
Yeah.
But it's the journey. This is when they get into this. It's not, you know, the destination. It's more the process and, you know, the refinement and the growth that comes with it. Um, because what point or what benefit do we get out of it if we're just, you know, learning this stuff and it's like, oh, this is so great and it's just so theoretical, right? The integration part needs time because when we take what we learn and integrate it into the personal and the physical and what we do in our, you know, the multifaceted parts of our life, that takes so much time. That takes a lot of time. And so being patient with that process, oh man, that's like a whole different thing that we can
Yeah.
talk about. So
So it's you know, life, you know, it's finite, and then we can talk about what all that means and
physical life is.
physical life, right? It's
Hmm.
finite, and so why do all these things? Why, you know? And then and you talk about it's not an end game. It's this process,
Mm.
and you the more you study that and get more curious and learn more, and you embody that, people notice. It's quite
Mm.
remarkable. I and it I you embody those things, and then it becomes part of you. And I think people notice. And okay, why is this person like this? You know, he seems to be up all the time. Seems to
Mm.
have energy. Um, you know, there's joy there, and obviously it's that that goes along with, yeah, they also got a lot of crap going on in their life because we all do all kinds
Mm.
of crazy challenges, but at the
Yeah.
same time
Yeah.
you embody those things, and it changes you,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I people notice, and it's like, and they want to talk to you, and okay, what's going on with you, what's
Yeah.
and you start to share.
Yeah.
So I think
That's,
that's really fun.
by the way, that's exactly what attracted me to you in the first place. I think because I noticed that and I worked for you and I I one noticed it and was aware of something going on with you. And then two, I was curious, you know, about that. And then three, it's because we have a lot in common, right? Like a lot of these things, I'm like, you know, when you hear somebody else's language, like you can be in an airport, right? And like there's hundreds of people, and then you hear like a language. Out of all the chatter going on, you hear that, right? And so that's kind of, you know, there's all these people that we work with, but then I notice that about Hector because I know that language. Or I'm learning, at least I'm learning that language, and I recognize a few of those things that you may have dropped in a meeting, or the way that you know, have carried yourself, or getting to know people, or those AM walks with, you know, whatever that may be. There's something that kind of, like you said, you know, you embody that. People will notice, and then not only will they notice, but they'll be attracted to that if they're on the same wavelength. And I think that's how, I mean, we became such good friends from the very beginning. And I remember, speaking of the very beginning, one of the books that you recommended, and I'll just be like, hey, Hector, what's the book you're reading? And then you'd ask me, like, hey, Abdul, what's the book that you're reading? So, because we're, you know, always, you know, wanted to, you know, learn about these things because it's amazing. And I feel like, you know, I'm making up for the last like 10 or 20 years of my life that I wasn't getting into that stuff. And I was just, I feel like I was, you know, just mumbling into life, you know, bumbling into it. Um, one of the books that you recommended was The Untethered Soul, and I think you're reading it for your second time, right?
Very powerful book.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, you recommended that book, and I'm like, I've heard of it, but because I now hear Hector talking about it, and because he talks about how transformational it was in his life, and me looking up to you, I'm like, you know, I gotta get on that book. And so I got the audio version of it because I just at that time I just did not have time to sit and read a book. So I did the audio whenever I would drive, and sometimes I would like go backwards and listen to something like 4 or 5 times. I'll just go back and I'm like, gosh, this is so deep. And like the art of surrender, right? Like living coming from this like place of surrender. And like how I thought surrender was being weak. I thought surrender is like, no, you gotta fight and this hustle and this grind and all these words that, just it's like no surrender. And I'm like, man, that's incredible. And then like for me, I come from an Islamic tradition. And I'm like, I think this is exactly what I'm supposed to do because Islam means to surrender. It literally means that. And I'm like, well, wait a second. So everything that I've been doing for the last like 20, 30 years just comes down to actually embodying this act of surrender in your everyday interactions. And surrender, it's not being weak, it's not being passive. It's about, doing your part, and then the outcome is something that you just have to like let through you, right? So not to, when these energies come in, not to hold on to them because we don't like them or because we love them so much. And it's like, oh my God, I want to hold on to this moment for the rest of my life. It's so beautiful, right? And so the next moment, 5 minutes later, it's not going to be like that. And this is like the surfing thing that we're talking about earlier. Because we're holding on to it, 10 minutes later is not that moment. 10 minutes later, it's a whole different moment. It's a whole different being unfolding, really. Like our biochemistry is so different 10 minutes later, especially after a surf. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
like you said, 99 times, it's amazing. I mean, even 100% of the time, it's amazing. But then we want to hold on to that, and it's not like that. We got to go to work. We got to show up. We got to, go take care of what we need to take care of. But so living and being in the moment and letting that, go through us, letting that enrich us, letting that just feed us for that moment. And then the next moment, just being there and present with it and just taking it in. Again, not disliking and holding inside of us what we don't like, and just holding on to what we do. And so that, yeah, just, this whole thing, I think, like when you talked about embodying, I had to share all that about it.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, surrender. It's so interesting that it's you find it in so many different places. The act of letting go. You find it in Taoism. You find it in the Stoic philosophy. You find it in the Bible and Christianity,
Yes.
and like you said, you find it in Islam, and it's everywhere. I mean, you can almost hit any type of philosophy, and it's about letting go, and it's not weakness. It's absolutely not being weak. It's an interesting thing. Well, hey, Abdul, this has been phenomenal. I mean, this has been it's so great to connect with you again, and I definitely I want to do. If you don't mind, we can do this again another time,
Absolutely.
and go deeper into the whole, more into the whole mental, physiological, spiritual connection,
Yeah.
and maybe we can bring somebody else in and get different perspectives. I think that'll be. Hey, if you want to do this again, I think that'll be fantastic.
I'd love to. I'd love to. I mean, I'm fired up listening about this stuff. I just as well as speaking about it. Learn. It's really incredible. It's really amazing. It's so deep. I mean, I feel like when we started talking about it, then it's like, oh yeah, this is it.
All right, this is a way to let's see what happens, how this evolves. So I'm stealing this from one of my favorite, I don't know, podcasters, Tim Ferriss. He's got this thing at the end of every interview. He asks, Well, most of the time you ask people, if you had this billboard, and you could put anything on it, what would you put on it?
Oh man, a bill. um, Smile. Period.
Nice.
Smile. Period. I think we just need to smile more. Um, yeah. I mean that I don't want it to, that by itself. I mean, you could have like a whole podcast just about the power of smiling. But we collectively need to smile more at each other. It's good for us. It's good for those around us. It's just the most amazing, simple thing that we could do.
It is.
Smile.
It is.
Period.
Period. Awesome. What a way to end this. That's fantastic. Well, thanks again. And then it's those simple things
Thank
in
you.
life that really do amazing things.
Thank
You,
you.
Abdul.
This has been
Great to
amazing.
see you. Great to speak with you.
Likewise.
And we'll do this again.
Yes. Anytime. Sure.